Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Democracy Report's weekly wrap up show. So, every Friday at noon, I'm going to go over the weekly events that we've talked about during the week, kind of wrap everything up in a neat little bow for you so you can enjoy your weekend with your family and not have to think about this stuff until Monday. At least that's the idea. So, that's my idea. Anyway, so before we get started, I would like to remind everybody to like and subscribe if you haven't. And you can read across the bottom of the screen if you'd like to, get on social media, on Blue Sky. You can follow us there. And you can also contribute to the show if you'd like by giving a contribution through buymeacoffee.com/the Daily Democracy Report. Or you can scan the QR code at the lower left corner to do the same thing. So with all the housekeeping out of the way, the topics of today, we're going to talk about Abrego Garcia. We're going to talk about Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen doing great work. We're going to talk about the Ukraine war with Russia. That's come up again. We're going to hear something from Little Marco on that one. Little Marco. We're going to talk about Harvard versus Trump. We're going to talk about the trade war. And I want to just finish up with something that one of my state senators had said, and wanted to make sure I get that out there in the podcast. So for today's show, lots to go over, and let's get started. Let me try to get things organized for myself here. The first clip I want to play you, this is about the Abrego Garcia case. As you all know, he got sent to El Salvador maximum security kind of gulag prison to be disappeared. There's lots of new news out there. It seems to be coming every day, minute by minute almost. So I wanted to try to catch everybody up on it the best I can at this point. And actually, right before I started the show today, there was more news that I want to cover. So it's crazy stuff and immensely important. This case is immensely important. Because as we know, Donald Trump had mentioned on multiple occasions now that he would like to deport homegrown criminals to foreign prisons like El Salvador, and actually told the president of El Salvador to build more prisons because we're going to be bringing more people. Homegrown equals American citizens, like you and me, like anybody watching that was born here. Crazy stuff. Anyway, let's get to this clip. The first clip I'm going to show you is with Lawrence O'Donnell. He is an MSNBC host of The Last Word. Awesome person, and really hits the point home. So I'm going to play this clip. It's a little long, about 2 minutes, but we'll talk about it on the other end. This is referring to Maryland Senator Van Hollen. So let's talk about it.
Well, as you've heard, the breaking news of the night is that Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen has managed to visit the Maryland resident Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
So I was just discussing last night with some family that I was wondering, and I'm trying to not hit the dark side of everything, but I was wondering to myself, I was like, well, is there a reason why they're trying to keep this guy out of the spotlight and not let people see him or know who he is or any of the other 200 people that got sent there? And I'm like, I hope they didn't just kill these people and say that they took him in. And I'm glad that hasn't happened. So
being held in prison in El Salvador in what the Trump administration admits was a mistake. Senator Van Hollen broke the news on Blue Sky, posting, quote, "I said my main goal of this trip was to meet with Kilmar. Tonight, I had that chance. I have called his wife, Jennifer, to pass along his message of love. I look forward to providing a full update upon my return." And of course, the president of El Salvador, in his wise guy mode, mocked the meeting with this tweet saying, "Kilmar Abrego Garcia miraculously risen from the death camps and torture, now sipping margaritas with Senator Van Hollen in the tropical paradise of El Salvador." And then at 9:01 p.m. tonight, President Bukele of El Salvador added this to his tweet, saying, now that he's been confirmed healthy, he gets the honor of staying in El Salvador's custody. Well, we will see about that. And of course, the president of El Salvador thinks tonight is a time to be mocking this prisoner that he's holding there and mocking this process. But his words are going to be used in court now in this case, as are Donald Trump's, and they are going to be helpful to Mr. Abrego Garcia, because what the president of El Salvador has demonstrated today is just how easy it is to get this person out of El Salvador, just how easy it is to control his movements in El Salvador and out of El Salvador. This will all be part of the case.
All right, so I wanted to leave it at that. There's a whole lot more to that video, so if you guys want to look that up on your own and check out his kind of entire monologue on the show, is pretty amazing. But he nails home a really good point there. Keep talking, guys. Just keep talking. You're burying yourselves more and more as you go. And, you know, you can't overstate it enough how much idiots these people are. Speaking of idiots, I have another one. I'm going to play this whole clip. This is probably the worst human being that I have ever seen anywhere, Stephen Miller. I thought he was an evil son of a bitch in the first Trump, era of Trump, I guess you could say. But he's just, I think the guy is just pure fucking evil. I hate Stephen Miller. And we're gonna let him talk here. I'm gonna show you this clip, and then we're gonna talk about it on the other side with some facts.
My question is, how do you know that he's a member of M13? The White House has repeatedly said according to intelligence.
By the way, according to our government and his government. In other words, his government has confirmed based on their own intelligence that he's a member of MS-13. First of all, do you dispute that he's an illegal alien?
What's that?
Do you dispute that he's an illegal alien?
No.
Okay. And do you dispute that?
So right there, I dispute it at this point. So I'll talk about it in a minute.
As an illegal alien, we have the right to deport him.
Going through
And he went through the legal process. So I want to be very. What I'm getting from this conversation, which is educational for me, is that not one person in the media knows the difference between a deportation order and a withholding order. Is that a fair statement? You're learning about this all for the first time right now? I guess so. Okay. So the deportation order means the judge has said he must be deported from the country. He has no right to remain here any longer. He must be removed from the country. So his only options are to be deported to his home country or another country. That's it. There's no other option. He doesn't get to stay here. He doesn't get to live here. He has no future here. He has no right to be here. He's an illegal alien. So when you keep saying return, because you've been spun up by the open borders advocates, you all seem to be operating under the illusion that he would be able to come to the United States and just continue to live here illegally. That's not an option available to him. His only choices in life are to live in El Salvador or to live in another country. That's it. There's no other option, legally or otherwise, because he came to our country illegally. Do you understand that?
All right, that's all I'm going to play of that madman. So we're going to break down a lot of what he said there, because I think it's important. First, I want to read to you some facts. Okay. So let's go over it from the beginning here. Who is Kilmar Abrego Garcia? He is a 29-year-old man from El Salvador who's been married to a U.S. citizen and a father of 3 children. He was deported on March 15, 2025 from the United States in what the Trump administration called an administrative error. Got to remember that too, and is currently in prison in El Salvador. Why was he mistakenly deported? The Trump administration has accused Garcia of being an MS-13 gang member, a charge he denies. Garcia has never been convicted. This is important. Convicted or charged with a crime, and in 2019, a judge in Maryland granted him a withholding of removal status that allowed him to legally work and live in the United States. He was granted a work permit by the Department of Homeland Security and lived and worked in Maryland up until his deportation. So that's pretty interesting facts. Those are facts, right? What did the president of El Salvador say about this case? On April 14th, Bukele, El Salvador's president, visited the White House and said it would be absurd. I'm not going to smuggle a terrorist into the United States. How can I return him to the United States like I smuggle him into the United States? Of course, I'm not going to do that. The question is preposterous. So we just saw Van Hollen got to meet with him. We just heard what Stephen Miller had to say. And the Department of Homeland Security has stated this is from Senator Van Hollen, so this is new. Senator Van Hollen has done more to bring an MS-13 gang member, human trafficker, and illegal alien back to Maryland than he has tried to keep his American constituents safe or advocate for the victims of these vicious gangs like MS-13. So that's what that's the gist there, right? So along there, I went to there's an article. I'll bring this up real quick here from the Department of Homeland Security. This is the DHS.gov their official website, and they have the real story of Kilmar Albrego Garcia is an MS-13 gang member with a history of violence. So fast facts: he was arrested, found with rolls of cash and drugs. Drugs were marijuana, apparently, which is legal in a lot of states now. He was arrested with 2 other members of MS-13. So it goes on, and you can see this narrative here. It kind of goes through everything that they determined in linking him to MS-13. Okay, so this is the officer at the time. They have his name redacted. There is other reports that show his name unredacted in the same statements here. But anyway, it shows that I forget where he is. He's down here. He wore a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie with rolls of money covering the eyes, ears, and mouth of presidents on separate denominations of money. Officials know such clothing to be indicative of the Hispanic gang culture, and it means basically see no evil, hear no evil, say no evil, and wearing the Chicago Bulls hat represents that they are members in good standing with MS-13. So I guess Michael Jordan needs to probably be deported as well for wearing a Chicago Bulls hat, which I'm sure he has many of. Anyway, it goes on and on and on, right? 2 judges found that he was a member of MS-13. That finding has not been disturbed, but he also was never convicted of any crime. Intelligence report found that he was involved in human trafficking, although there's no evidence here to suggest that. It is true that he was an illegal alien, and we covered that. And then there was something about some domestic dispute stuff that actually got settled and no charges were filed. So that's that. So that's part of the truth there. What I just showed you is part of the truth. But now let's go a little bit further. In this next article, disgraced Maryland police officer tied to the 2019 Abrego Garcia gang report. A now fired Maryland police officer authored the 2019 gang report, the one I just showed you, that the government referenced when it mistakenly sent a Maryland father to a notorious prison in El Salvador. This is by USA Today. A copy of the gang report released by Attorney General Pam Bondi on April 16th shields the name of Prince George's County, Maryland police officer. But another unredacted copy, like I had said, provided by attorneys for the imprisoned man, shown it was written by Ivan Mendez. Why is this important? Just days after the March 2019 encounter at the Home Depot, that's where all this took place. This, alleged MS-13 gang members and all that stuff. It was at a Home Depot. They were apparently just kind of wandering around outside Home Depot, loitering, I guess, and that's why they got questioned. It was in Hyattsville, where Abrego Garcia was flagged as a potential MS-13 gang member. So days after that, Mendez was suspended from the force. Court records show that he was indicted on June 2020 for misconduct in court. Court records allege he shared sensitive and confidential information about ongoing police investigations with commercial sex worker. Anyway, he was basically indicted, or, shows that he had misconduct and all this stuff and got fired. Yeah. Mendez tied to the outbreak, blah, blah, blah. All right. So I guess what I wanted to relay by showing you all that was that it is true that he does have maybe a record, but no convictions, no criminal convictions or anything that he's had. Is he a perfect model of American life? Maybe not, but who is? If he got a speeding ticket with a Chicago Bulls hat on, would that officer have said that he was a member of MS-13 because of that? Who knows? But it's important to weigh all the facts. And the simple fact of the matter is that he got sent to this prison. He was married. He is in a status of, let me see, what is the, there is, hang on for just a second while I find this. Yeah, so the Supreme Court on April 10th, the United States acknowledged that Albrego Garcia was subject to withholding order forbidding his removal to El Salvador, and that the removal to El Salvador was therefore illegal. So that was from the Supreme Court of the United States. So that's a fact. So he needs to be brought back, and he needs to have this this due process occur. And I believe once that occurs, that he'll be set free. That's just my opinion. Wanted to bring you as much of the facts as I could find and let you make your own determination. But don't make your own determination. Let's see how this plays out. And I'm going to continue to talk about it. So there you go. That is the Albrego Garcia part. But I also wanted to show another video. And this is from, let me make sure I have this. Okay, this is a little bit long. This is about a 2-minute video. And this is an LA superintendent response to DHS officials that were attempting to enter 2 elementary schools. This one's really interesting. So here you go.
18 past the hour last week, DHS officials attempted to enter 2 public Los Angeles elementary schools, asking to speak to several children. The department said they were conducting wellness checks on the children. School officials turned them away, however. Joining us now, Alberto Carvalho, superintendent of the Los Angeles Unified School District and a personal friend of mine whom I very much admire. Alberto, thank you for being with us this morning. So what exactly happened in these schools?
Good morning, Jose. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Great to see you. Look, last week we had about 4 to 5 agents showing up at 2 elementary schools 2 hours apart. We believe it was the exact same team asking for access to students ranging in grade from 1st through 6th grade. Obviously, we trained our principals, our support staff in denying access to students without a judicial warrant, a criminal warrant signed by a judge. I would find it very difficult to believe that a 1st grader or a 2nd grader would have committed some type of crime that would require some interaction with a federal agency. So the principals asked for identification from these individuals. They did produce IDs. When the principals attempted to write information from their IDs, they quickly pocketed those IDs, conveying to the principals that that was not allowed. And then they actually conveyed to the principals that they wanted to meet with the students, and they had parental permission from these students' parents to have access to them, which is counterintuitive since they did declare in a statement that was produced by the Department of Homeland Security after this incident that their reason for being at the schools was because these students were unaccompanied minors. By the way, we made contact with the guardians of these children. In no instance, at no point was that access granted to these federal agents.
So really important stuff there. So typically, ICE agents and immigration agents aren't, or historically have not been allowed to be entering schools, especially like elementary schools, seeking any individuals that were undocumented in that way. The fact that they lied about it to try to gain access to these students is unimaginable. The schools did a great job by protecting those students. And I'm anxious to see where that goes, if this is going to happen all over the country, and what's going to be the result of that. I think that's another important story that may be emerging. Maybe it's been happening and I just haven't been following it, but I think it's really important to bring that to you today. And hopefully it's not something we got to keep following up on, but crazy stuff. Just wanted to throw that in there today. All right, we're going to switch gears here to the war in Ukraine and Russia, and the peace talks that are trying to be done. Apparently, pretty shitty by the Trump administration and Marco Rubio. First off, if you all remember the Oval Office visit by President Zelensky, where he was just ridiculed by the vice president, by the president. It was disgusting. It was despicable, and it never should have played out that way. But everybody is cozying up to Russia and Vladimir Putin and trying to find a solution to the end of the war that really doesn't involve the best interests of Ukraine. So with that said, I want to play another clip. We're actually going to play, most of this clip here. Well, not most of it, but a good portion. And this is, I'll let this play, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
The US Secretary of State has warned that America could stop trying to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine if there are no signs of progress in the next few days. French diplomats had said talks between the United States, European powers and Ukraine in Paris yesterday made excellent progress. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the talks about a potential ceasefire had been encouraging. Along with envoy Steve Witkoff, he was meeting the French President Emmanuel Macron as well as representatives from other European countries. Before departing from Paris, Marco Rubio said America will decide within days if Ukraine ceasefire is doable.
I think it's important to remind everybody that the Ukraine war is a terrible thing, but it's not our war. We didn't start it. The United States has been helping Ukraine over the last 3 years, and we want it to end. But it's not our war. I want everyone to understand that. And the reason why I make that point is the president has spent 87 days at the highest level of his government repeatedly taking efforts to bring this war to an end. We are now reaching a point where we need to decide and determine whether this is even possible or not, which is why we're engaging both sides. As you know, Ambassador Witkoff has had not one, not two, but 3 meetings with Vladimir Putin to determine the Russian perspective on this and understand what it would take for them to end it. We, through General Kellogg, myself, and others, have had repeated engagements with the Ukrainians. So we came here yesterday to sort of begin to talk about more specific outlines of what it might take to end the war, to try to figure out very soon, and I'm talking about a matter of days, not a matter of weeks, whether or not this is the war that can be
pressure
ended.
campaign.
If we can, we're prepared to do whatever we can to facilitate that and make sure that it happens, that it ends in a durable and just way. If it's not possible, if we're so far apart that this is not going to happen, then I think the president's probably at a point where he's going to say, well, we're done.
So a lot of important stuff there from little Marco there, freaking idiot. Why are they saying it's not America's war all of a sudden? It's not. I mean, granted, we don't have troops on the ground, but it's in our national best interest and the international community's best interest to ensure that Russia does not take any Ukrainian territory and that Ukraine is left to the sovereignty that it deserves and Russia needs to back off and leave. That's the only way that this gets resolved. According to little Marco, it's let's cozy up to Putin and make sure that he has everything that he wants in order to cease fire and try to end this war. And Ukraine just has to give up territory and all that. It's disgraceful. It's despicable. The way they treated Zelensky is terrible. If you'd notice there, Marco Rubio mentioned Putin's name, never mentioned Zelensky's name. That's telling to me. So that's the state of things. We'll see what happens in a couple of days. That little Marco said that, well, we're just going to stop trying if and most likely continue to stop providing aid to Ukraine as well, which is just a disgusting and despicable end to this if that's how it plays out. So more to come on that. Wanted to make sure we got that out there. Next thing is some more disgusting stuff. We're going to move over to to Harvard, and I'm just going to call it Harvard versus Trump at this point because that's pretty much what it is. I'm going to play this entire clip. It's only about a minute or so, and this is President Trump in the Oval Office giving his take on the whole Harvard issue, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit after. So let me get that queued up. Okay, there's our orange demon right there. Here we go.
I think Harvard's a disgrace. I think what they did was a disgrace. They're obviously anti-Semitic. And all of a sudden they're starting to behave.
Takes one to know one, I guess. Fucking idiot.
But when you see what they were saying, what they were doing, when you see the way they took care of events, when you watch that woman, that horrendous president that ruined the image of Harvard, maybe
we'll talk
permanently,
about that.
In Congress, in the halls of Congress, when you take a look at what happened there, it was horrific. And, I've looked at a lot having to do with it. I'm not involved in it. It's being handled by lawyers. I read about it just like you did. But tax-exempt status, I mean, it's a privilege. It's really a privilege. And it's been abused by a lot more than Harvard, too, by a lot more than Harvard. So we'll see how that all works out. I don't think they've made a final ruling. I don't believe they've made a final ruling, but it's something that these schools really have to be very, very careful with. I think Harvard's a disgrace.
I don't know how I got that into a loop. God, it's worse hearing it the first time. A couple things to take out of that. So the president that he was referring to was President Claudine Gay. She was in front of the House committee talking about the anti-Semitism and things on campus and hate speech. She had resigned as a result of, she did have a pretty poor showing there. But she did resign. Alan Garber, who is the new president, assumed that role and became permanent president. So he assumed it on January 2nd of 2024. Okay, this is well over a year ago. And he'll serve till the end of the 26-27 academic school year at Harvard. So just wanted to put that into context a little bit. And then what he was saying about reading stuff in the paper, I assume he's talking about reading stuff in the papers as far as the tax-exempt status. But I believe it was him that said something on True Social about maybe they should lose their tax-exempt status. So and then the fact that he referred to other schools as well is something that is just going to ratchet and escalate. And I'm looking forward to how this all plays out because go Harvard and other schools fight the good fight, man. Don't give in to this ridiculousness. And that's exactly what it is really ridiculous. So last clip I want to play is about the trade war, but it's a little different. It's talking about, and this is Jeffrey Sachs, and I haven't really heard him before. And, I think, he says a lot of interesting things. Now, this is a long topic here that he talks about. This is from the Times Now World. Not even sure if I know who that really is, but this is from the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, and he speaks for almost an hour, fielding questions from the room and everything. But I just wanted to play you a minute here, and this is kind of like Trump's trade understanding. I'll play the clip, and then we can talk about it.
If you take your credit card and you go shopping and you run up a large credit card debt, you're running a trade deficit with all those shops. Now, it would be pretty strange if you then blamed all the shop owners for having sold you all those things. You're ripping me off, you're ripping me off, you're ripping me off, I'm running a trade deficit. That is the level of understanding of the President of the United States. The trade deficit does not represent at all trade policies. It represents spending relative to production or earnings. We call that an identity. I teach it in the second day of my course in international monetary economics. Trump never made it to the second day.
Okay, I wanted to stop there. There is so much more to that, but that goes to show you, from an expert in this field, Trump's lack of understanding at even that level is insane. It's crazy time, right, for America. And if he's telling this right now, what do other world economic leaders are thinking about all this right now? We are the laughing stock of the world. And if we think that China is in trouble here, I think it's somewhere around 15 or 18% of something of their imports come from the United States, or exports, or whatever. They're not in trouble here. I don't think they need to come to the table. And they've set themselves up for something like this. So I think it's completely the wrong path to go. It's a disaster so far. Donald Trump is like freaking Mickey Mouse. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And he does go on to say there Mickey Mouse is smarter than Trump. That's perfect. That's awesome. So that's all I wanted to talk about the trade stuff. But I did want to say I wanted to talk about one more thing. State senator in the state of Pennsylvania was apparently at a civics bee, a national civics bee, and someone posted on Facebook that they were there, their daughter was there, and so I want to read to you the post. It was on Facebook, and then I want to talk briefly about it before we wrap the show up for today. I'm appalled but not surprised by the behavior of our Senator David G. Argyle. He's not a U.S. senator; he's a state senator. At the local round of the National Civics Bee, my daughter made it through 2 difficult rounds to be able to defend her essay about book banning. We were so proud of her hard work and determination. As she began to defend her position that books shouldn't be banned from schools, Senator Argyle had the chance to ask his question from the panel of otherwise wonderful judges. He asked my 6th grade child if it was appropriate to give pornographic magazines to kindergartners. This question was both wildly inappropriate and ridiculous. Her paper had nothing to do with pornography, and she had to very calmly, might I add, ask him what that even meant. Just think about that, a 6th grader. To my shock, he replied, "Naked pictures of people." She certainly maintained composure and redirected him back to the topic at hand. This discussion has no place at the Civics Bee. I am further appalled and furious that I have now to explain pornography to my 4th grader who was there to cheer on his sister, or her sister. I don't know when Mr. Argyle last stepped foot in a library, but they aren't providing pornography. Discussing this with my 6th grade daughter on a public stage shows a shocking lack of decency. I can only assume he set out to make a political statement and or embarrass my child because he favors book banning. but he succeeded only in outing himself as vile and out of touch. My daughter now moves on to the next round in Harrisburg. I sincerely hope the politicians and judges in attendance can put aside their personal biases to support these kids and their hard work. I don't care if you're from the state of Pennsylvania or not. That's appalling. There's no place for that. And I hate that it's from I guess who cares, from a Republican senator. So he had this to reply. During last night's local round of the National Civics Bee, I posed a question as a volunteer judge to a participant that was not age appropriate for this setting. I apologize to the young lady, her family, and all the participants who worked hard to get to this point with excellent presentations by the students who submitted entries on book bans and many other important subjects. I was attempting to ask if some books and magazines are not appropriate for some age groups, a subject which has received considerable attention in the General Assembly in recent years. In hindsight, my obvious mistake was in citing an example that was itself not appropriate for this age group, a mistake which I will not make again. So here's one of the responses from a person on Facebook. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got called out on it. You thought it was perfectly appropriate in the moment without a second thought. All because you wanted to have your gotcha moment over a 12-year-old girl who is defending the access to banned literature. Congratulations, you played yourself. There's a lot of other comments from people saying, do us all a favor and resign. You're only sorry people took notice and you were caught being disgusting around a group of children. This isn't an apology. It goes on and on. I wanted to make that point only because our society cannot fall into this kind of disgusting lack of just decency. I hope we're all better than that, and I hope we're better than this guy, Senator David G. Argyle. I hope society is a little better than you. I'm going to leave it at that for the weekend, everybody. Thank you so much for watching today. I really do appreciate it. Please like and subscribe if you do like the content. We're going to be back next week on Monday at noon Eastern time for more news. And hopefully it won't be that shocking, but we'll be back. So thanks again. Have a great weekend. Spend time with your families. Be good to one another. And we will talk to you guys next week. Thanks again. Take care. Bye-bye.